Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's ILTA webinar, Secure and Enhance Application Delivery with the latest Citrix tools, on-premise or in the cloud. I'm Gail Persicelli with ILTA, and I'll be serving as your moderator today. I would like to thank Cornerstone.IT for their sponsorship, which keeps the ILTA webinars free to our members. Our presentation today will run about 45 to 60 minutes. All questions should be entered into the Q&A box, and if those are not answered during the presentation, we will address them at the end. Before we start, please know that we are recording today's webinar and we'll post a link to our website under recording shortly after today's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we will ask that you take a few moments to complete the evaluation. I'll now turn over the webinar to Jim Morio from Cornerstone.
Thank you very much, Gail, and thank you and to the ILTA folks for putting together this webinar and the roadshow that had preceded this. Just to give you a little background on this presentation before we begin, this was part of a roadshow that we just completed in, I think, 6 cities. It was very well received. We got some good feedback from it, and some of that we've added to today's webinar. The presenters today will be Cornerstone Senior Engineer Vidit Desai, Sunny Suhail. We also have another Cornerstone Citrix engineer, Tom Yuha, who's also on the line, who may also add to the conversation. Because this is a webinar and we're not in the same room, I'll ask that you guys feel free to ask questions during the presentation. You may even want to give us some of the topics that you may be interested in us covering, that maybe something that you guys are struggling with today with respect to Citrix that you'd like us to elaborate on. If we can, we'd be happy to answer those questions. Ask the questions as we're presenting. If it's relevant to the topic that we're talking about, I'll interject and I'll ask Vidit or Sunny to talk about it. If it's not relevant to the topic that we're working on, we'll bring it towards the end of the presentation. Just a little bit on Cornerstone. We are a longtime ILTA partner. We've been presenting at the ILTACon conference, at webinars, roadshows for as long as we've been in business, 15 years. We have offices in New York, Philly, DC, and LA. Citrix and I manage our 2 primary partnerships. We're also a Microsoft, VMware, and Cisco partner. And as I mentioned, we've been in business for 15 years. Just high level, what we're going to talk about today is essentially we broke it up into 5 sections. We're going to talk initially about the application layering, which is part of that Unidesk acquisition, something that a lot of Citrix users have been asking for some time. Then we'll get into the workspace environment management, which is part of another acquisition from NetScaler. For those of you who use AppSense or looking for something more than Citrix's Profile Manager, that's an interesting add-on to their products. Then we'll get into some Zen Mobile, a little bit of ShareFile, NetScaler MOS. We've been getting a lot of questions about that and how firms can use the Insight tool to help troubleshoot connectivity issues. That's a very popular topic. And then we'll close with Citrix's newest product there, SDWAN. So again, I encourage you to put some questions in the Q&A panel so that we could keep this interactive. But with that, I'll hand it over to Vidit.
All right, thank you, Jim. Depending on where everyone's connecting from, good morning or good afternoon. So let's get started. We'll start talking today about Citrix application layering. As Jim mentioned, this is part of the Unidesk acquisition by Citrix in January of this year. This is separate from the AppDisk technology that was, an offering last year. It's not compatible. It improves greatly upon it. So, let's talk a little bit about what this is. Instead of building out a golden image, many of you are familiar with, VMware viewers and desktop. It's an app environment. You'd have a golden image, you'd manage it, you'd update it, put applications on there. If you needed to, make multiple golden images for different departments. So the idea with Citrix application layering is you're going to just start with an operating system layer, right? And then you'd seal that. That's just a layer on its own. You have a platform layer. These are your hypervisor tools for your hypervisor, and that's going to be a layer on its own. And then you're just going to start building out your applications in individual layers. So let's look a little more in detail what this entails. So you build out your OS layer, and you can build your apps on top of this. They're going to be dependent on your OS layer. So if you got Windows 7 as your base OS, and you're upgrading to Windows 10, and you've built out a lot of application layers, you're going to have to build out those layers again for your other operating system, right? So these layers that you build are dependent on the base layer, the base OS layer. One of the newer things that's being offered, as you can see on the slide, is the user layer. This is in beta with 4.5 release. That would allow users to actually install applications on their own. So it's a little bit questionable whether you'd want to roll that out for your users. As far as the application layers go, you can be really discreet and clean here and just build one app per layer. There is some limitation here. There's only 50 apps you can build out per image. So app layers, I'm sorry. So if you've got a bigger app stack, you're gonna have to organize your applications to have more than one app per layer. But you know, if you're under 50, you can obviously break it down and be discreet and clean. There's two types of layering involved with layered images. There's just your basic layered images, which you're actually going to layer before boot. So this is going to have your virtual disk file pre-assembled before a user is actually assigned to a disk or a XenApp server. As an alternative, there's also elastic layering, which we're going to touch on later. So if you have questions, maybe just hold off on that for now. Elastic layering allows you to pull down applications on demand on boot. So, you know, if you have your testing application, you just got an application you might just want to give to a few users or a handful of users, you know, you don't want to look at elastic layering. And so we'll look at a use case towards the end of this section.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate what Vidit said there. The important point being with the application layering, when the image is booted up, it's assembled, and then you boot it up. So it's running when someone logs in the morning. Let's say you've booted up 50 or so, however many virtual desktops that you need. It's sitting there waiting as a full image. You're not, when the user logs in, they're not bringing down applications with the layered image. That's an important distinction to know that the image is already up and running and assembled and not dynamic as people use it.
Thank you. One of the really nice features here, it's really exciting about app layering, is you got the platform connectors. You got compatibility here across different platforms, and this isn't just limited to Citrix. So if you're using, you know, for image management and delivery, VMware View, Composer, or Instant Clones, this is compatible with that. Additionally, on the hypervisor side, you have some flexibility. Use Nutanix, Azure, vSphere, Zen Server, Hyper-V. So you've got, you know, the popular family of hypervisors available. You just have to build out a platform layer so you could deliver them on a different hypervisor, right? So you just build out a platform layer with those tools, and you'd be able to deliver it to a different hypervisor. One of the nice features here is also, since this is, you know, you're building out the image before you're delivering it to your hypervisor image management system, you don't need to be on any specific version of Citrix, right? So those of you who are still on, say, XenApp 6.5, you can make use of app layer, right? You can use this technology, so it's something to look at. So let's look a little bit at the technical process here. If you have questions, we can get a little more into details, but let's keep it a little bit high level. On the back end, you're not building out a SQL server or anything like that. There's just, on your hypervisor, an enterprise layer manager, ELM, right? And that's what you see on the left here of your screen. That's a virtual appliance, and you're just going to deploy that. It's a vendor-defined, virtual appliance file. You're going to deploy that on your hypervisor. All of the application layers that you built out you build out are actually going to be stored within that ELM. So you're going to want, Citrix recommends about 350 to 550 gigabytes of free space, depending on, how many layers you're going to build, how many, how big your application stack is. So you build out your layers on this appliance, and when you're ready, you're going to create an image template. You're going to select which layers you want to actually deliver. Right? So you're going to select these layers, put them in an image template, and you're going to publish this to your image management platform. If it's PVS, provisioning services with Citrix, it's MCS, machine creation services, VMware View, instant clones, VMware View Composer. And this is actually going to, as Jim was talking about, this is going to assemble the image into a single file, right? And this is different. If you've been using Unidesk 3.x with VMware, it actually spawns a lot of different files, right? So this is a big improvement. You're not creating a bunch of differentials, on your data store. You're just going to have one file, one VHD or one VMDK, right? So when you're actually managing it, it's simpler. You don't have to think about the fact that there are layers built in. You have this file ready to go. There's a platform connector, which allows you, as I mentioned, to connect to any of these 5 different hypervisors. So when you're ready, you would deliver this image to your hypervisor, deploy the image. Okay. So let's look at a little use case. How is this actually going to help us? So I built out these shared layers, and I want to deliver, these in different templates, right? So I'm going to grab my OS server 2012, let's say, and I'm going to grab a few layers, print driver, got Symantec. I'm going to build a different layered image. And the last one, maybe I put Adobe Professional in because I don't want too many people getting that. So now I've got, 3 sets of images. Now this might look like I'm just managing different golden images, but there's an important difference here. And I can speak to this from a specific use case for myself. I manage images for our clients, Zen desktop environments, Zen app environments. And over the past year, we've had increasing requirements for security. We used to patch every 6 weeks, every 2 months. Now we need to patch every 2 weeks sometime, or every 3 weeks. I had a case over this past summer where, I was asked to update a staging image, and had a golden image, and I had a copy in staging where we'd make changes before applying them to production. But I had a lot of requests come in, and one of the requests was for a court forms update. And about 2 weeks later, they introduced new firewalls and Palo Altos, and they had a malware product we had to put on the image, and I had to work with firewall team, application expert. We had to get the vendors on. It took 3 days. It was a lot of work. Well, so we were ready to deploy, and rewind 3 weeks ago, when someone asked me to update the court forms, he wanted to roll those back now. Well, this makes it very complicated for me because all those changes are already built in, right? I've already done the changes on top of the court forms update, so I can't just revert back without losing all the changes I made. So in the meantime, I got Jim telling me, hey, don't forget, you got to patch the image. We got all the security compliance you got to meet. Make sure you patch the OS. If I patch the OS, I need to have a control, right? I could break applications. I could affect user experience. And if I'm doing all this at the same time, I don't know what's breaking what. So what I ended up doing, I ended up creating multiple copies of this image to validate them in isolated staging environments for different sets of users and groups and applications. And then I had to apply them again in production after deleting those golden images. But what could I have done here? How could I have saved all this time instead of creating multiple images, destroying them, and testing them? Well, I could have just created a new version of the OS layer, patched it, combined it with these other layers, and validated it. Instead of deleting it when we were done, I'd still have this version, and I could repackage it later, right? It wouldn't be fixed and tied into all these other layers. So this really gives you a lot more flexibility when you're testing, deploying, and it can save you a lot of time and headache and really facilitate this process. So something we really highly recommend, start looking at building these out. And once you're ready to go, you can kind of see here graphically how easy it is when you build out the layers. your ELM just needs you to connect to a hypervisor, build out a platform layer with the hypervisor tools, and your application layers, all those layers you've built are already ready to go, right? You don't have to rebuild them because they're on a different hypervisor. If you've got a backup data center or you want to go to the cloud in 2 or 3 years, you don't have to rebuild your image. All you need to do is install those hypervisor tools, create a platform layer, and deliver it to your target hypervisor.
Yeah,
so this would be great for secondary data centers, backup data centers, cloud. Jim, please go ahead.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. That's a use case that we're running into currently. Is a customer of ours is looking to build a DR data center in Microsoft's Azure, and they assumed that they were going to need to rebuild a separate image.
Do we lose Jim there?
Platform from VMware to Azure without having to rebuild the image.
All right, thank you, Jim. Sorry, I was not sure if it was on my end. I lost you there for a second.
Yeah, I know we're having a little bit of an audio issue there, so we're trying to fix that on the back end.
Okay. So yeah, lastly, let's just talk a little about elastic layering, and this is a little different. You're not having the layers actually combined beforehand. What you have is you'd assign via an Active Directory security group. You'd assign a layer to a particular set of users or user. And it was a typical case here is going to be, say, for your XenApp environment, right? A shared session host. So typically, you're just going to deliver, say, a layered image to a VDI environment, and that's just one user per VM, right? So you could still pull down some extra layers if you wanted on boot. You have a couple users who need Adobe Professional, and you don't want to install that on your base image, right? So you could have it come down on boot. One thing just to be aware of, it could affect boot times. You have to be careful if there's going to be, startup drivers or services that the application is dependent on. It's not going to be a great candidate for elastic layering. So your typical example really would be on a XenApp host, and you have, say, one user get Chrome and some applications. Your second user could get Chrome and Adobe Professional. So you don't have to go in and hide the application from users and worry about other users accidentally toggling it. Just have it come down for the users who actually have the license. All right, let's move on and start talking about workspace environment management. This is another big acquisition by Citrix. It was just a little over a year ago. They bought NorthScale, and NorthScale they integrated NorthScale into their product. So NorthScale workspace environment management has 3 components that we're going to cover. The first is resource optimization. And we're talking about the image, right? We're talking about the actual VDA, your XenApp server, or your XenDesktop image. So it's going to manage the resources and optimize them. The second component here is user environment management. There's a lot of firms we work with often use third-party tools for user environment management. This now allows you to integrate this kind of fine-grained user environment management control into Citrix. The last component here is a transformer, and that's optional component module that you would actually use on the physical endpoint. So we'll touch on that last. All right, so let's talk a little about the resource optimization here. The workspace environment management product, you'd install an agent actually on the VDA, the endpoint, and this is going to allow you to basically do throttling. You can control CPU, RAM, IOPS, and you can optimize these. And you can optimize these in a variety of ways. For example, you can cap it. Right? I can cap the CPU at a certain percentage per application. Why would I want to do that? Well, coming back to Adobe Professional, as a lot of you know, if you're on a XenApp server and one of your users launches Adobe Professional, what happens? Everybody slows to a crawl, right? They just get hammered. So you could cap it. You could say, look, I got these resources. They're shared on my ZF server. No application should use more than 20% of the CPU on the server. Or you could actually cap it, so throttling in there. You can also optimize, some of these. So what you can do, for example, for responsiveness, this first point here, you could optimize the responsiveness of applications you're launching. So if I've got 20 tabs of Chrome or IE open in the background, Windows is not that user aware, right? It's going to keep running those processes, keep RAM and CPU devoted to all these tabs running in the background that I'm ignoring. I don't even care. I launched Word and I want it to open up right now, right? I don't care. I got the tabs open. I don't want to wait 10, 15, 20 seconds. So I can actually optimize, foreground applications, user responsiveness, so that you're not going to have any of that RAM and CPU going to those Chrome tabs. They're going to be used just for launching those applications. One note here, there's a lot of configuration you can do here, and this requires customizations and testing, obviously. Kind of an unexpected or maybe expected gain here is you can really scale on your server, on your host, right? So if you start testing and you notice, well, I can start capping RAM and CPU without hurting the user experience. And in fact, with this optimization, they're getting an improved performance and experience, but I don't have to use as many IOPS, CPU or RAM on the machine, right? So you might be able to scale, and the numbers here, 70, 80%, you can scale on your host, instead of getting, 60 users, 65 users on a host, you get 95, 100, right? And save money, you get higher user density out of your host.
Yeah, well, the simple ROI on that is, if you're trying to build out, a DR data center to support 300 attorneys, and you're getting 60 virtual desktops per physical host, without the resource optimization, you're going to have to buy 5 or 6 servers. With the resource optimization, you're going from 60 to 100 desktops. Now you just need to buy 3 or 4. So significant savings on the hardware side.
All right, so let's talk about the second component here, which is really cool, the user environment management component. So there's actually a lot to this, but we'll just try to hit the high-level items here. One of the things it really does, it accelerates logins, even log-offs, and it can help optimize the experience for the user, especially the user perception. So one of the things that happens when you log on to a Windows machine, Windows processes your logons, so your GPOs, your GPP, your logon scripts, your network drivers, your map drives, your printers, even initiating your session. It does that sequentially, right? Essentially, it can't do a lot of that at the same time. NorScale's technology actually allows you to process up to 96 Windows parameters simultaneously, right? And so the gain here is you can get your logins down to 10 or 15 seconds, right? So that's a big gain, really on the user experience side, the user perception side, user adoption. Often they want something that mirrors the physical desktop. So here you can actually get them that feel, right? You log in and it boots, you see the desktop right away. You're not waiting 30 seconds, 45 seconds just to see your desktop icons come up. There's also some kind of intelligent, processing built in, so certain things that don't need to come down at logon necessarily might not, right? They might continue processing in the background. And again, this is a lot about user perception, not as well as optimization. And so just to give you an example, one of the features that you can set here is fast log off. So what would that do? That would actually kick the user out when they log off. Their session might not be completely logged off, right? It's going to disconnect them. So to them, it feels like they're logged off. It's going to go ahead and flush, terminate all the applications, flush all the data on its own, and take care of whatever you got going on with the VM, power management tools you got going on with the VM. So this is really nice. You don't have to look to a third-party tool like AppSense. You've got GUIs built in here for optimizing and customizing things like the start menu, GPPs, GPO settings that are very common, and you might use in a third-party tool or have to do through GPMC, group policy management.
I'll just add a quick note on licensing. For those of you familiar with Citrix's licensing, they have their standard, enterprise, and platinum licensing. A lot of these features come with the platinum license. So if you have enterprise, you may need to upgrade to get the platinum. If you already have platinum, you get most of these features with it. So there's not an additional purchase.
Yeah, thanks. The third and last component we're going to talk about here with Workspace Environment Management is the Transformer. This is a module component that you'd actually install on the physical endpoint, your PC, your FAT client. And what this is going to allow you to do is do a desktop lock, a PC lockdown, put your PC into a thin client kiosk type mode. So if you've got FAT clients you want to repurpose, or if you're just transitioning your users, from a physical image to a virtual image, this can help you simplify administration, right? Just lock down the physical PC. They don't even see it. They just see their Citrix icons or Citrix desktop, can log in directly. So this will help you a little bit in repurposing your machines, and it replaces that old desktop lock product they used to have.
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt it. Again, if anybody has any questions about this, please feel to put them in the QA questions. Thanks.
A little bit of technical overview. I can go into the weeds unless there's questions about this, but this is your basic Citrix infrastructure, right? For any of the server components, you got your SQL database on the back end. You build out a broker server eventually, essentially a WEM server. For high availability, build 2. You put the console on the server, and there's an agent that goes on the endpoint, whether the VDA or the physical endpoint. All right. The third thing we want to talk about today is the Zen Mobile. What's new and cool in Zen Mobile? It's pretty exciting. Zen Mobile used to have a really high entry point for cloud. If you want to go to cloud, it used to be, I think, 300, or they dropped to like 150. Now it's 25, right? So if you're looking at competitors, you're looking at Zen Mobile, you got ShareFile, and you're looking at maybe rolling it in with Zen Mobile. 25 users minimum. That's pretty low. I mean, that's a pretty reasonable entry point. That covers most firms out there. ShareFile has no minimum, so if it's something you want to try, you only need to go get 1 license. Very little commitment involved there. So let's talk a little bit about Zen Mobile Cloud. If you're not already in the cloud, I mean, it's something to look at. Zen Mobile in the cloud, what it does is basically takes care of your infrastructure for you. So if you're building out Zen Mobile on-premise, you got to build out a SQL server, you got your virtual appliance, you got your applications and your certificates, right? So you got to manage all of that. When you go to the cloud, you don't even see SQL. You're not managing SQL at all. If you want to be highly available, you just upgrade your license, right? You select the appropriate license you want. You don't need to deploy an additional node. You don't have to deal with making sure that they're in sync, that there's no extra, latency between sites. Citrix only has 30 millisecond allowance between the latency between sites for Zen Mobile clusters. It's pretty strict. So you simplify your management here, right? You're just managing one console, and you're always up. I know when I have to patch our Zen Mobile appliance, there's a little bit of downtime for the store when I'm rebooting, when I'm actually patching and rebooting it. When you're in the cloud, you're always up, and you're always on the latest version, right? So you don't have to worry about keeping track of, is there a new patch? What was the latest threat? I didn't read my email this morning, and there was a threat that came out, and they already released the patch, right? I was busy with the client. You're always on the latest version, right? So anything that's potentially, quote unquote, 0 day, you're going to be protected against. On the application side, the way it used to work, and it works with a lot of competitors, was Zen Mobile, you have to prepare your applications, right? So if you're an iOS shop, you got to get an Apple developer relationship. You got to have your MacBook with your special hardware so you can actually do the wrapping. If you're using Android, you got to understand a little bit how to wrap that. So you got to manage app IDs, provisioning profiles, certificates, keep track of expiries, and there's some expertise involved here also. And there's a high margin of error. Right? You got to repeat this process with every application. Every time you update an application, you got to repeat this process. So you miss one thing, your application can break. And I know it's pretty stressful. I know for me, it's very stressful keeping track of all the expiries, the relationships. So you got multiple environments you're trying to track. So what Citrix did this year, and it's been pretty revolutionary, is they separated two components out. They separated out the reason you do all that prep work, the control, the policy control, the fine-grained policy controls you get over the applications. You still retain those. You have those in your appliance. They separated those from the application, from the data. That's hosted. It's public now. So what happens is when you download the application file from Citrix, it's not really an application file, right? It's like 400 kilobytes, megabyte. It just has your policy settings with a pointer to your Google Play Store or to your App Store, public App Store. So you're not maintaining these applications. You're not keeping track of when you need to update them. You're not wrapping them. Citrix is doing that in partnership with Android, with Apple, right? And so you still get your policy control. These are still managed applications. They're still containerized, right? But you're not maintaining these anymore. In addition, you don't have to do all this beta testing with different devices, maintain a Samsung and Samsung Knox, Android, Windows Phone, iPhone, iPad. You know, once you're public, these are being patched, and these files are ready to go. You don't need to prepare these files in these applications.
Yeah,
So this is a big jump. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add, the Zen mobile clients have been very popular because the attorneys like them, but the back end had been unpopular because they didn't offer a cloud-based, or at least they didn't have a cloud-based offering for smaller to mid-sized firms. You had to start it, as Vidit said, at 300 users. Now that you're down to 25, those smaller firms, and at this point almost everybody has a requirement to have an MDM in place. Those smaller firms could now not have to have on-prem or pay to have someone maintain their MDM system. This goes, it's hosted. You get the benefits of Citrix's secure mail client, which again has been very popular from an interface point of view, and it's cloud-based. So historically, firms were going to Mass 360 for a cloud-based MDM. But the client for the Mass 360 wasn't as popular as Citrix's secure mail client. So just to piggyback on what Vidit's saying, it's the administration of it is significantly less, and those smaller firms can now get hosted Zen Mobile.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love secure mail. I mean, I use it personally. I have an iPhone. I don't like the native iOS mail. They update it. They change the skins all the time. I've been using secure mail for about a year and a half now. And one of the advantages is, I don't even see when it updates, right? I update all my applications on my phone in the background. So when they push an update, it just updates automatically. And thanks. And one thing to touch on actually that I missed, when you're doing a cloud infrastructure for Zen Mobile or even a competitor, there's no zero deployment options. And I know some competitors will tell you that. There's zero on-premise deployment. If there's zero on-premise deployment, you're going to have to manage all your user accounts and passwords completely separately in the cloud, right? At minimum, you need to have an Active Directory connector on-premise, so it can read your directory and sync it to the cloud. That's pretty much, the minimum requirement for any sort of cloud deployment. And that's all you need for Zen Mobile. You just need the cloud connector on-prem. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about ShareFile. I'm a little quick here, but there's some new offerings. So ShareFile is separate from Zen Mobile. If you've got Workspace Suite, you've got both, but it's a great file share and sync solution. It's one of the better enterprise ones. I know there's a couple competitors who are coming up who do a decent job, but they probably don't offer the full suite of features that ShareFile does. One of the kind of leads that ShareFile has really on the flexible storage options, and they've been expanding this. So in addition to the SharePoint, Office 365 connectors they also have connectors now for personal cloud. And you might think, well, why would I want this? Like, I don't want to open up, my secure share file to every user's Dropbox. Well, you don't have to. What they have now is very fine-grained control for your personal cloud. So you can just open up Google Drive for one managing partner. Right? You have fine-grained control. You can do it per user. So you've got a managing partner. He's like, look, I do all my work. I've been doing it for years in this cloud. Can we sync it up? Well, you can allow it, right? You can allow it just for that one user. You don't have to open it up for your entire firm. A product that was out there before but was pretty buggy is Drivemapper. This is pretty attractive, and it's been working really well. We've seen it in a few deployments. We've helped a few clients with this. The biggest complaint I've had is actually that it works too well, and users just drag and drop. So consider the use case. It may be works too well. It may not be the solution that you want, but this will allow you to map a drive to whatever your share file location is, if it's in SharePoint to the cloud, or if it's on premise. So you just deliver it, say a virtual desktop, like a map drive for your user. And this is in addition to the desktop sync client, your ShareFile Outlook plugin, and of course your mobile apps. Something I see that doesn't get used a lot, it's a great product, is the IRM component of ShareFile. So when you're sending a file with ShareFile, you can choose to restrict for the user what they can do with this file and how long they can do it. Or you can tell them, you're only going to be able to see this, you can print it, you can only view it online, you can download it. You can even tell them I'm sorry, jumped ahead there. You can even tell them to have it expire after, say, one access, right? Just like you get a message, it's Mission Impossible, destructs after you finish reading it, right? One access per user. So you can limit, the access by time period, or you can do it by actual number of accesses. One thing to note here, if you actually give the user full control, you're delivering the file without any protections. It's just naked. It's out there in the open. The Podio functions of ShareFile have also been improved, and they're basically like a lightweight DMS now. You can check out files, you can have approval workflows. It's integrated with their e-signature product, Right Signature, which is a great product. You need the Platinum ShareFile license, but they're mix and match. If you've got 2 or 3 users who need to sign off on documents in your legal department, you can just get Platinum licenses for them and then combine them with your on-premise licenses. All right, and now I'm going to hand it off to our NetScaler Guru.
Yeah, while we're transitioning over to Sunny, I'll just make some points on the NetScaler Insight, and now it's called the Management and Analytics System. Most firms have a NetScaler, and in most cases they're just using it for SSL encryption and load balancing, which is fine, and they're great at doing that. What many firms don't take advantage of, and it's built into the product if you've got the Enterprise or Platinum Edition, is the Insight Analytics on how to troubleshoot connectivity. So the use case we use all the time is managing partners out at his beach house or wherever they are, and they've got poor connectivity at home, and they come into the office on Monday and said Citrix was terrible over the weekend. And then the CIO calls the IT manager, and then there's this mad scramble on it, trying to find out why Citrix was poor for the managing partner. Well, these analytic tools solve that problem right away, because you could go in and see, partner Jane Doe, she was working on Saturday afternoon, and her round trip time was 3,000 milliseconds, or the latency between her and the data center was huge. So you could take a screenshot, send that back to partner, and say, look, looks like the issue is on your Wi-Fi at home. We could see that you had this round trip time, blah, blah, blah. So this is built into the tools that you guys have already, but may not have taken advantage of it. So that's sort of the preamble for Sunny. So Sunny, are you all set?
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Bert. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about NetScaler MAS. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of organizations out there, they use Insight Center or Command Center, so they're going to be end of life soon. So we have a new tool here, NetScaler MAS, Management and Analytics System. And what it does is basically allows us to consolidate, the NetScaler appliances and kind of get management under one pane. So if you have like multiple NetScaler appliances or Citrix SDWAN appliances, you could just all add them, under one console, manage them, monitor them, and troubleshoot them. And on top of that, yeah, you get HDX inside, Web inside, so you get everything under one management pane here. And of course, the NetScaler MAS, it allows us to monitor up to like 30 virtual servers for free. All right. So basically NetScaler MAS. So what does it do for us? So it allows us to do like end-to-end app visibility. So what that basically means is you have HDX inside, we have web inside. We can monitor HDX connections. We can monitor, again, the latencies, how the user connections, are there, how the user is connecting, their latencies, bandwidth, and of course the web inside, which basically pretty much, that tracks the web applications. You may have OWA, you may have SharePoint environment. You could just basically track those as well. So NetScaler MAS also allows us like automation, so you could basically create a configuration, from the NetScaler MAS, and then you could record it. And once you record it, then you could basically push out the same configuration, to multiple NetScalers. So you don't have like recreate the configs over and over again. You could just create once and then deploy it, to other NetScalers. So it could also help you like spot problems before the users complain. One typical example would be the HDX, connections. Users connections are slow, high latency between their endpoint device and the data center, or from the NetScaler to the data center. You could identify those problems. And apart from that, it could also allow you to identify the root cause of issues. A typical example would be some anomaly, like for example, there is an application, and that application is very slow. The NetScaler talks to server in the backend, and there is some delay in communication. It could raise those red flags. Hey, there's an anomaly based on machine learning technology that has been implemented in the MAS. So it could raise an anomaly for security breaches, security issues. Somebody is sending a sync packet, a lot of sync packets to the NetScaler appliance, or there's a denial of service attack, or some violation of an application. It could raise red flags of that. So you would get that in the management console. You could see those things. So basically, it offers like centralized management. You got all your NetScaler appliances under one management view, and you basically could manage, monitor, look at the security posture of the applications, how they're doing, and even send alerts, to the admins. So now, as far as the NetScaler MAS is concerned, it just gathers data from different sources. You could gather like the data from the network. It would basically get data from SSL transactions, vServers, ICMP protocol, TCP, HTTP, compression, UDP. So all the network-related data is basically captured, plus some inside data is captured. That will be HDX, Web Inside, Gateway Inside. So, and also some advanced analytics. So what the MAS is doing is pretty much capturing data from different sources and then presenting you with reports, whether it's HDX, Web Inside, security, SSL transactions, and then you have some advanced analytics here that basically will check for anomalies. So since MAS has some machine learning, technology built into it, so what it does is checks the applications over a period of time, and if it sees some anomaly, like there's some DNS down service attacks or sync attack happening, it could raise red flags. Or a server had very low latency. All of a sudden, the latency went up. You could just raise red flags on that. So it could help you out with automated threat detection and helps you there to kind of automatically, troubleshoot things. You could just raise red flags on, hey, you have duplicate IPs, in the network. You've seen that before as well.
Sunny, if I could just add to this, with Citrix's unified gateway, a lot of firms are front-ending all of their apps with the NetScaler and putting their two-factor authentication. So we see a lot of firms put their I'll just use Duo as an example. It's the most popular two-factor at the time, putting Duo on their NetScaler and front-ending access to their Citrix environment, to their OWA, to their SharePoint, to their document management system, to even VMware View for those folks who are not Citrix on the back end. And then all the traffic, all internal traffic, all remote access comes in through the NetScaler. And then with all of these analytics, you could see if someone's trying to break in through whatever means that they're trying to, because you have this central location, central point of entry through the NetScaler, and it has these built-in security features. So something very interesting. We've been a long-time Citrix partner, and to see the evolution of the NetScaler and all the capabilities they're adding to it, it's very impressive, and especially in this environment of compliance and security, it's a great tool.
That's great. Yeah. So that's right, Jim. So yeah, since UAG kind of is becoming a central point, all your external, people, when they're connecting to the UAG, they could be connecting to the Citrix, or they could be connected to non-Citrix applications, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud. You could configure UAG, in so many different ways. And this is at the same time gathering all this information in the background and using different analytics here, whether it's advanced analytics or inside analytics, and gives you lots of information there, whether it's HDX inside, or whether it is like some red flag, based upon like security posture or some attack happening, on the external side, the traffic that comes from outside. So the typical example here is a screen here. It's a security dashboard, all the traffic that's hitting, let's say, our OWA or Zen desktop, it basically will assign an application a threat index. So a threat index of 7 means the application is not faring well. There are some violations, some vulnerabilities. So we just assign a number from 1 through 7. You could also check here what the top clients are hitting, as far as the violations are concerned, what are they doing, what application are they hitting. And you could also have here some IP reputation, where, it checks the IP, or the remote IPs, checks where the traffic originated from, if that IP is a good or bad IP. So you could get all that information here, in this screen. Kind of gives you the application health, security-wise, how they're faring, the traffic that's coming in to environment, how that's faring, gives you information about IPs, if there are any sync attacks, denial of service attacks, all the information will be under this screen.
I'll do the quick preamble
Okay.
on the SD-WAN before Sunny gets into details. We've got a lot of firms that have multiple offices. They're paying significant amount of money for their MPLS WANs, and looking, because they want that extra redundancy. They've got 2 different providers. MPLS WAN is very expensive, and we've seen a trend of firms trying to get redundancy out to their remote offices and even at their main office without the cost of expensive WAN links. And so the SD-WAN is starting to become a popular tool.
Yes. So just want to elaborate on that. If you look at the traditional data centers, we had typically applications on-prem, and people used to access internet. But things are changing now. We have apps all over the place. We have apps on-prem, and we have apps in the cloud. And if the WAN link goes down, so that's very, it's a big cost if the WAN link goes down because users can't access the applications. So, traditionally companies have been implementing MPLS. So MPLS, yeah, been working great. You have multiple offices, you connect them reliably with MPLS, but there's also a cost associated with that. At the same time, it's a little bit rigid as far as MPLS is concerned. If the MPLS goes down, then you may have a device there, that does failover, but while the device does a failover for you, there might be already user disruption when it comes to, let's say, Zen desktop or VoIP, they may already have dropped a connection. So what SD-WAN basically does is a smart device, and you could use cheaper, WAN technologies, like you could use broadband connections. So the SD-WAN device pretty much takes decisions, within 30 seconds. If your WAN link goes down, there's a blackout or a brownout. So most of the time we've seen from experience, the link is not totally down, but there's a brownout, or there's high latency, or there's jitter. Because of that, user experience suffers. So what SD-WAN basically does is, it aggregates all your WAN, links. They could be broadband, they could be MPLS. It virtualizes your WAN, and then does the load balancing and monitoring and failover. So especially with Citrix SD-WAN, it basically monitors and measures each packet that goes out in the offices. It's monitoring those and measuring those, like how soon they arrive at the destination. Based on that, it makes a decision, how to route packets over multiple links. So the end result here is your remote site that you have, if it has multiple links, you could use cheaper links, aggregate that. The remote site always remains up. You have better user experience. At the same time, you reduce your cost. You can move away from your MPLS to cheaper, broadband links and use SD-WAN. So that's the next one. So it's a typical example here. You have a main office data center. You have an SD-WAN appliance here, installed, and then you have a remote office, and you got another SD-WAN appliance installed there. So as you can see here, we have a MPLS link, and we have active broadband link in the main data center, and in the remote office, we got, again, MPLS, and we got two broadband connections. So if you have real-time applications, examples are VoIP. So what SD-WAN could do for you is send the same packet, across the two links. It can duplicate the same packet across two links, so that in case a link is down, the packet is still received to the other link. So your VoIP, applications can stay up, no issues there. So at the same time, what you could do is the SD-WAN could cache your data. It could also dedupe your data and compress your data. So you can also optimize an application. You can basically optimize the application by giving higher priority to a certain application, like an interactive application like Citrix Zen Desktop or Zen App. They're interactive. It's an interactive application. You want to make sure there's not too much latency. There are not too many drop packets. You want to monitor it. You could give it higher priority. So you could do all those things. So in the nutshell here, what happens is if a link has a brownout, jitter, latency, it adapts fast. The NetScaler appliance will adjust and set it across the other links that are available. So the same thing applies even if you're connecting to the cloud. Let's say you want to connect your company to Azure or Amazon Cloud. So you could use SD-WAN appliances there, and this SD-WAN appliance could dedupe your data, cache your data, have multiple broadband links, and connect to the cloud.
Yeah, and that's a great use case, Sunny. With firms going to hosted data centers, the redundancy at their internet and their WAN connection becomes more critical, and especially if you start putting it up in Amazon and Azure, if you can have that SD-WAN on both ends. It's fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, we've seen that before with clients. They don't want to go with the express route, for example, as far as Azure is concerned. They don't want to go with that expensive route with dedicated connections. They want to have the single link, and then all of a sudden, when the VPN or IPsec tunnel goes down, the user experience suffers. So that's where it could come to rescue, as far as SD-WAN is concerned. It
Yeah.
kind of aggregates, checks all your broadband links, and makes sure the packets are constantly sent across the WAN.
Yeah, and
So
I know we got about.
here,
I'm sorry, Sonny. We got about 5 more
Yeah.
minutes if you want. I think this is the last slide, right?
Yeah, there shouldn't be much here. This should be 1 or 2 slides. Yeah, it's the last slide. So sorry about that. Let's see here. Yeah, so it's the last slide here. It talks about the NetScaler SD-WAN differentiators. So as far as the Citrix SD-WAN is concerned, it basically it monitors each packet rather than other competitors' products. They monitor maybe the connection, but the Citrix SD-WAN monitors each packet. So that way, what happens is it's much more quicker, able to make a decision. If 3 packets are failing on the destination side, consecutively, it just readjusts the traffic to the other links. It's much quicker in that sense. So you could have asymmetric networks, and you could be basically getting these UDP packets across multiple links. It shouldn't have any problem with that. So adaptation time is in milliseconds. If something goes wrong, it basically treats, it basically measures the delay in the unidirectional manner. So the outbound and the inbound paths are measured separately. Now, as far as the application optimization is concerned, yeah, you could give priority to certain applications, so that way your Zen app, Zen desktop experience will be better, or any other application, enterprise applications. So it's integrated in the product itself. And then, of course, Citrix knows the ICA protocol much better, so they have much more deeper visibility into the ICA connections, using NetScaler SD-WAN.
Thank you, Sonny. I know we got a few more minutes left. I put my email address in the chat, and I could also add it into the Q&A. If anybody has any questions that they want to contact us, feel free. I will stand by and we'll stay on the line if you have any other questions. I think, Gail, did you want to hit on the survey?
Yes, if you will all take a few seconds to go ahead and complete the evaluation, that would be great. And I also like to mention that a link to the recording will be posted to our website shortly after today's presentation. Okay, I'll give it a few more, about a minute or two, and then we'll get everything all done.
Get it all done.
Jim, everyone, thank you for the great presentation.
Yes, thank you. Just one thing I want to add, Tom corrected me on one thing I said earlier. The app layering, they've updated it. It supports up to 200 layers per image now, and it's at 50. Just let everybody know.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks everybody for attending, and Cornerstone, once again, great presentation. Thank you for sponsoring. Everyone have a great week, and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gail. Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take it easy.